Well, here we go. Distinguished guests, good morning and welcome to the 2023 Australia Day flag raising ceremony, part of the Townsville City Council's Australia Day celebrations. My name's Pat Hessian, I'm from ABC North Queensland, and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies for today. The 2023 Australia Day flag raising ceremony is being live streamed, so that's through the Townsville City Council website. Welcome to those who are joining us. You'll find the link there if you are looking for it. The Australia Day flag raising ceremony is presented by the Townsville City Council in partnership with the Queensland Government, and the ceremony is assisted by the Australian Government through the National Australia Day Council. The Townsville City Council and Queensland Government would like to acknowledge the Australian Defence Force for its continued support of this Australia Day flag raising ceremony. I'd also like to acknowledge the Wulgurukaba of Gurumbilbara and Yunbanan, the Bindal of Guggenbidden and Nawagi, the traditional owners of this land. We pay our respects to their cultures, their ancestors and their elders, past and present, and all future generations. Well, I welcome you to please be standing now as we welcome the Australian Defence Force Royal Guard of Honour, provided by the 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, led by Major James Woodcock-Smith. The band of the 1st Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, led by today's music director, Major Andrew Ryder. And we also welcome the gun battery provided by the 4th Regiment Royal Australian Artillery, managed by Gun Position Officer Lieutenant Samuel Cox, and the personnel of the Royal Australian Air Force. Please have a seat. Australia Day is a day to reflect on where we've been and where we're going as a nation. It provides the opportunity to respectfully acknowledge our rich culture and heritage as part of Australia Day celebrations. It's a day to celebrate our extraordinary nation and people with their unwavering community spirit and generosity. We gather today to witness the raising of the Australian national flag together with the Aboriginal flag, the Torres Strait Island flag, the Queensland flag and the Townsville flag. Today, flag raising ceremonies are held across Australia as a celebration of Australian identity and pride. There's plenty to celebrate about being Australian and living in Australia, from our rich history, our proud Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island heritage, cultural and faith diversity, and our unfaltering mateship in times of need. Elements that make Australia the great country that we live in. The Australia Day flag raising ceremony moved to Townsville's Jazeen Barracks in 2015. It provides Queensland's largest garrison town with an opportunity for the community and the Australian Defence Force to acknowledge our rich culture and heritage together as one. It's an opportunity to view the Australian Defence Force and recognise its invaluable service to Australia. And we'll now begin to receive the official guests. So please remain seated for the arrival of the Australian Defence Force Host Officer for today's Australia Day flag raising ceremony. It's Major General Scott Winter AM, Commander 1st Division and Deployable Joint Force Headquarters. The Australian Defence Force Royal Guard of Honour will now receive the Host Officer, Major General Winter AM, with a general salute. Please remain seated for the arrival of Councillor Jenny Hill, the Mayor of Townsville, and Mr Shane Hill. The Australian Defence Force Royal Guard of Honour will now receive the Mayor of Townsville with a general salute. Palaszczuk MP, Premier of Queensland and Minister for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. The Australian Defence Force Royal Guard of Honour will now receive the Premier of Queensland with a general salute. I'll invite you now to stand, please, for the arrival of the Governor of Queensland, Her Excellency the Honourable Dr. Jeanette Young, AC, PSM, and Professor Graham Nimmo, RFD. The Australian Defence Force Royal Guard of Honour will now receive Her Excellency with a royal salute.
Royal Guard of Honour! Royal salute! Present!
Please be seated as Her Excellency inspects the Australian Defence Force Royal Guard of Honour and the band of the 1st Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, along with the host officer, Major General Scott Winter AM, and the Guard Commander, Major James Woodcock-Smith. As Her Excellency inspects the band of the 1st Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, you will notice that they will finish playing for a moment, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how this works in a moment, some of those traditions. The ceremony of the inspection of the Guard of Honour dates back to 1660. That's when King Charles II returned to England to claim the throne. And one of Cromwell's cavalry regiment decided to switch their allegiance to King Charles. The regiment had been encamped at Reading, and on hearing that His Majesty had landed, the commanding officer dispatched one of his squadrons to meet the King and beg leave to serve under the Crown. So when that contact was made, the squadron commander explained the purpose of his mission. The King, as you would understand, was a little bit suspicious, but a lack of courage is not said to have been one of his faults. So he left his coach, and accompanied by only one attendant, he strode forward to the squadron, drawn up along the side of the road. At this point, King Charles passed slowly along the ranks, keenly scrutinising each man's face to determine his attitudes from their facial expression, and also to be ready for an attempt on his life as he passed along the ranks. And we can see that with the way things are playing out here again today. So going back to the history lesson, satisfied with this inspection, King Charles accepted the squadron commander's offer of allegiance and ordered him to act as his escort for the journey back to London. A little bit later, another unit of ex-Cromwellian troops begged permission to enter the King's service. King Charles subjected them to the same close scrutiny and also accepted them as more members of the Royalist Army. So in making these inspections, King Charles II could not possibly have known that he was establishing a custom that was to be handed down through the centuries. This custom of inspecting troops continues to be performed by dignitaries and inspecting officers on ceremonial parades and serves the original purpose of confirming readiness of all units and the state of discipline in a unit. The inspecting officer also inspects the band. That's more to show their appreciation for the music.
Head on around this side. It is. I'm sure you'll have a full day of activities today.
Yes, excellent. And then go off to Thursday Island.
Yes, on the way through to Cairns for some investitures.
Yes.
I believe you'll see some of the band members there again. Of
Oh,
course.
really?
Yes,
Oh,
we're
that's
travelling
wonderful.
up.
We don't often have a live band. So
And we'll
that's
certainly be heading up for that.
Thank you.
I'm just going to make our way further over here, ma'am, and I shall ask to take my leave.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Good morning, ma'am.
people's the basis of the Army and Defence Force all across the region.
And thank you, Your Excellency. As mentioned earlier, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island flags will be flown alongside the Australian, Queensland and Townsville flags today, highlighting our proud heritage, the rich culture and state of our nation, and the importance of our collaborative future. Before inviting our speakers to the stage, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge a number of people who are in attendance today. That, of course, includes Her Excellency, the Honourable Dr. Jeanette Young, AC PSM, Governor of Queensland, and Professor Graham Nimmo, RFD. The Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk, MP, the Premier of Queensland and Minister for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. The Host Officer, Major General Scott Winter, AM, Commander 1st Division and Deployable Joint Forces. Councillor Jenny Hill, Mayor of Townsville, and Mr. Shane Hill. Senator Nita Green, Deputy Senator for Queensland. Duty Senator for Queensland. Mr. Philip Thompson, OAM MP, Federal Member for Herbert. The Honourable Scott Stewart, Minister for Resources and Member for Townsville. Mr. Aaron Harper, MP, Member for Thuringowa. Our councillors, Councillor Anne-Marie Greenie, Councillor Liam Mooney, Councillor Kurt Rabine, and Councillor Maury Soares. Brigadier David McKinnon, Commander 3rd Brigade. Wing Commander Naomi Gill, Commanding Officer 27 Squadron. Deputy Commissioner Mark Wheeler, Queensland Police Service. Emergency Services Assistant Commissioners. Emergency Services, Warrant Officer Class 2 David Boy, 3rd Brigade Uncle. Uncle Francis Tapham, Torres Strait Island Elder. Australian Defence Force servicemen and women, and guests here today in person and, of course, with us online. Well, I'd now like to welcome Warrant Officer Class 2, David Boy, 3rd Brigade Uncle, to the lectern to give our cultural respect of country, accompanied by Corporal Cody Harris, and he will be the Yidaki player. So we'll welcome him on stage now.
Goya Tankari Kuyar, Goya Marakun, Bindley, Wokarukaba, Katanda Barrier, Goya Balua, Gakung Nagar, and again Kandi and Barrier, Tatienda, Gungun Barrier, and Gundakan. I speak words of respect to our people of Bindle and Wokarukaba. I also speak respect to elders right around the country and to our special guests here. Ma'am, and ma'am, lovely to see you again and honoured. I also pay respects to everybody here, and I called on my spiritual ancestors to be here and protect us all while we're here today. It's a shared history, and it's our own day today. Thank you.
Thanks, Uncle David and Corporal Harris. Well, I'd now like to welcome Elder Uncle Francis Tapham from the Torres Strait Island to speak on behalf of the Torres Strait Murray Island community.
Thank you, Pat, MC. Good morning to you all, my people. Well, and thank you very much. My name is Francis Tapham. I am honored to be here today to welcome you to country on behalf of the First Nations people of Torres Strait Islander community. I'm a Meriam man from Mary Island, and I'm a member of the Dogorab tribe, which is one of the 8 tribes of Mer. I would like to begin acknowledging the traditional owners of this country, the Aboriginal peoples, and in particular the traditional owners of this region, the Bindal and the Walgurukaba people, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Her Excellency, the Honourable Dr. Jeanette Young, AC, PSM, Governor of Queensland, the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk, MP, the Premier of Queensland and Minister for Olympics and Paralympics, Councillor Jenny Hill, Mayor of Townsville, other distinguished guests, MPs, ADF personnel, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'd like to acknowledge our great-grandparents, parents, and siblings for the important role they play as members of the Australian Defence Force in defending Australia in the past world wars. It is also a time to reflect on our Australian Defence Force who are at present overseas representing our country. And they are not here with their families to celebrate this important day with us. This year is also to celebrate 80th years of the men of the Torres Strait Islander Light Infantry Battalion who enlisted in the World Wars to help defend our country from the enemies. Torres Strait Islanders all over our country request the assistance to support and celebrate this event with us in the Anzac Day Parade to commemorate the men who served during this time. 26th of January is a very important day for all of Australians who call this beautiful country home. On this day, some of us will march down the streets of Australia. It is a day to reflect on what we have achieved and what we can be proud of, our nation. The day for all of us to reflect on the past and to make Australia an even better place for the future. Let us take this day to acknowledge our history, confront our problems, celebrate our shared humanity and our cultural differences. Take pride in our achievements and look to the future with confidence. Let's show the world that we are a nation to be admired and envied, not just for our prosperity, our environment and quality of life, but importantly, a human rights record. This day also is a National Ceremony Day. This day can also be celebrated in many forms of event. Someone's birthday, having a barbecue with the families, playing sport, or it could be a day of mourning for others. Whatever the day means for you, make the best of it. In closing, I would like to welcome you to country and say to you, we are one, but many. I am, you are, we are all Australians. Thank you.
Thanks again, Uncle Francis. And I'd invite you to join me in welcoming Her Excellency, the Honourable Dr. Jeanette Young, AC PSM, the Governor of Queensland, to say a few words.
I'd like to, of course, acknowledge all of the dignitaries we have here, but I won't go through them all, so I apologise. But particularly, of course, our Premier, the Premier of Queensland, and also Premier for the Olympic and Paralympic Games, the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk, MP, and also Councillor Jenny Hill, Mayor. So, but welcome, of course, to all of our other dignitaries, and thank you for hosting us here, Major General Winter. I extend my appreciation to Warrant Officer Class 2 Uncle David Boy and Mr Francis Tapham for sharing their wisdom, and I think we heard a lot of wise words, with us as part of today's special Australia Day flag raising ceremony. I too would like to acknowledge the original custodians of the lands on which we gather here today, the Bindal and Walgurukaba people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and all the First Nations people here this morning. This important event very happily brings my husband Graham and I back to Townsville for the 4th time since I was sworn in as Governor of Queensland, and I am honoured to be here. I'm very proud to see our Australian Defence Forces represented so impressively by the 3rd Battalion's Royal Guard of Honour, the band of the 1st Battalion and the 4th Regiment Royal Australian Artillery. Shortly, the Australian national flag and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags will be raised, and these flags are powerful symbols, not only of who we are today, but also of our past and of our shared hopes and future together. They're a reminder that we're a nation made strong by the experiences and contributions of each one of us. Ours is such a rich history, stretching back over 65,000 years, and continue today through the valuable influence and contributions of our First Nations people. The flags also present the unification of our individual efforts, Queenslanders standing and growing together, respectful of any differing viewpoints. Flags are subject to fair winds and foul, as are communities, and yet again we've seen that in Queensland over recent weeks with the flooding that's occurred. At least we know that in times of struggle or adversity, the courage and compassion for which Queenslanders are renowned comes to the fore, and our support for each other pays off. More broadly, every one of us has a part to play in our national story. Today gives us that opportunity to reflect on what it means to be Australian, a chance to acknowledge our achievements and to celebrate with deep and enduring gratitude the beautiful place we call home. And I know throughout Queensland and across the country, communities, families and friends will be marking this day in their own unique ways, and that is exactly as it should be. So, I thank each of you for your involvement in today's flag raising ceremony and for your individual contributions to the well-being and vibrancy of your community and nation. And I particularly want to acknowledge those local heroes who are this year's recipients of the Townsville Australia Day Awards and whose efforts help to make this city and this state even more incredible. And I also look forward to welcoming with the Premier and the Mayor our newest Australian citizens in a special ceremony following this one. So I join all Queenslanders in looking forward to a tremendous year ahead with confidence and optimism. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And I'd now like to invite the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk MP, Premier of Queensland and Minister for the Olympic and Paralympic Games, to the lectern.
Thank you and good morning everyone. Can I too start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Can I of course acknowledge our Governor, Dr Jeanette Young. Can I acknowledge the Mayor, Jenny Hill. Can I of course acknowledge Minister Scott Stewart, Aaron Harper, Senator Nita Green, Philip Thompson. Can I also acknowledge our Host Officer, Major General Scott Winter. To all of the other councillors that are here, can I acknowledge each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Well, good morning. What a delight to be here again in this year's flag raising ceremony an important part of Australia Day celebrations. Today, we acknowledge our past that began tens of thousands of years ago with First Nations peoples, the world's oldest living culture. We respect the cultures and wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that continue to enrich our lives. We reflect on our past, our present, and of course our future in celebrating what it means to be Australian in the 21st century. While recognising the day holds different meanings for different people, we also acknowledge and thank the people who have helped make Australia what it is today and who continue to keep us secure. Because Townsville is the heart of our national security, ensuring Australia is one of the safest countries in the world. The members of our Australian Defence Force who hold a significant and important presence in this city help uphold our democracy so we can live in a free, open and just society. More than 14,000 current and former ADF personnel call Townsville home, and there are 5,500 people serving in the regular and reserve services. In addition, the city is home to about 8,700 ex-servicemen and women who've transitioned to civilian life after serving our nation with courage and pride. We're very proud that we have the recent commencement of the Queensland Veterans Council, supported by the Veterans Reference Group, to formalise the relationship between our government and veterans, giving them a stronger voice. We, of course, are committed to ensuring that they receive the appropriate and deserved support during and after their service. That is why Townsville and the veterans community are at the heart of today's flag-raising ceremony, a ceremony proudly held here since 2015 by the Queensland Government and the Townsville City Council. And I want to thank the Mayor once again for co-hosting this event. Raising the Australian, Queensland, Governors, Townsville and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags, each significant and symbolic on their own. But we stand beneath them united and proud, celebrating exactly what the Governor says, what it means to be Australian. I wish you all a very happy and safe Australia Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. And now we welcome Councillor Jenny Hill, the Mayor of Townsville, to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. Could I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet on here today and pay our respects to their culture, their ancestors and their elders past and present and all future generations. And I'd like to thank Warrant Officer Dave Boyce and Uncle Francis Tapman for making us feel welcome. Could I acknowledge all the dignitaries here today, but most importantly to the Governor of Queensland, Dr. Jeanette Young, PSM, and to the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk, Minister for All Good Times that are leading into 2032. So thank you. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and it is an honour to be here this morning to, again, be the Mayor of the city that hosts the official flag-raising ceremony for Queensland. And I will continue to remind all the dignitaries how our city has had a colourful history when it comes to our national flag. Townsville was the first location of the first vice-regal raising of the then newly designed Australian flag in 1901. And that flag raising was undertaken by our nation's first Governor-General, the Earl of Hopetoun. Today of all days, though, we should look to the sky to think about what that coloured sheet of material really represents. The raising of the flag is an opportunity for us to reflect on what it means to be Australian. It renews our identity, our sense of place, and our pride in community. It unites us all under one symbol of this nation, no matter your religion, your culture, or your place of birth. And it is one that has a unique story as the only flag to fly over an entire continent, and the first in history to be chosen in a public competition. It speaks volumes that overseas our flag is seen as a symbol of hope. And here it flies proudly over schools, businesses and homes. It is raised in triumph at sporting events and flown at half-mast as a symbol of respect and mourning. And when our men and women in defence are called to serve overseas, our national flag is seen as that symbol of support and help. So today, as we look up, have a think about what it means to be part of this country we call home. But above all, no matter who you are, please be proud to be Australian and unite as a community on this Australia Day. It gives me great pleasure to be here to witness the official flag raising of the national flag here in Townsville, and I thank you for sharing this moment, allowing me to share this moment with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'll now invite Uncle David Boy and Uncle Francis Tapham to join the flag party for the flying of the Aboriginal flag and the Torres Strait Island flag.
Roll guard! Attend!
Well, please be upstanding for the raising of the Australian national flag and remain standing as the Australian Defence Force, represented by personnel from Army and Air Force, currently serving in Queensland, raise the Aboriginal flag, the Torres Strait Island flag, the Queensland flag and the Townsville flag, followed by the Australian National Anthem, performed by musician Chantel Anderson and the band of the 1st Battalion Royal Australian Regiment.
Roll guard! Go salute! Freeze down!
Let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath our radiant southern cross, we'll toil
And please also thank me in thanking, please join me in thanking musician Chantal Anderson, and once again to thank you to Uncle David and Uncle Francis. Let's give them a hand. In just a few moments, the traditional 21-gun salute will be beginning. Once again, be advised it will be very loud. You may have time to get to the council staff at the back of the pavilion to get some hearing protection if you'd prefer that. The gun salute takes place up at the Cross Boomerangs Amphitheatre, which is up in this direction. If you are in the main pavilion, though, you will be able to see it here on the big screen. The gun battery is provided by the 4th Regiment Royal Australian Artillery, managed by Gun Position Officer Lieutenant Samuel Cox. Once again, if you are inside the pavilion, you will be able to see this on the big screen. Today's ceremony provides us with an opportunity to reflect on what it means to be Australian, whether you were born here, whether you migrated here, or perhaps you're visiting and aspire to one day become an Australian citizen. Australia has a very special place in all of our hearts regardless. The 21-gun salute is being conducted with 4 105mm ceremonial guns. This is something that goes back even further, dating back to the 14th century. Naval ships would fire a volley from each gun when entering foreign ports to indicate the guns were now empty as a sign of goodwill. These salutes were considered a gesture of friendship and trust among artillery and naval forces. The 21-gun salutes are most commonly fired for the Queen's birthday or royal visits, along with Australia Day, Remembrance Day, or visiting prime ministers or presidents. They're now used to honour guests at significant events or occasions involving royal or vice-regal persons as well. These salutes may also be provided for state occasions and funerals. In 1830, they agreed to a fixed salute of 21 guns as the established rule of the service in regards to royal salutes. Salutes are always fired with an odd number of rounds, as this is considered to be lucky. Even numbers may be used, however, they are reserved for occasions of mourning. Well, that concludes the formal proceedings today. So, as you are already standing, I don't need to ask you to do that, but Her Excellency the Honourable Dr. Jeanette Young, AC PSM, Governor of Queensland, will receive a final royal salute from the Australian Defence Force Royal Guard of Honour, provided by the 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment and led by Guard Commander James Woodcock Smith, along with the band of the 1st Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, led by today's music director, Major Andrew Ryder. This is before the Guard depart from the plaza today.
Royal Guard of Honour! Royal salute! Present! Royal Guard! Attend! Royal Guard! Close order! March! Royal Guard! Touch up the right! Right! Stop! Royal Guard by the right! Burn by the centre! Quick!
I think one more for the band. Yeah, please have a seat, everyone. Always impressive seeing him out there. It's either pouring rain on a day like today or it's as warm as it is today, and it's pretty warm here in the pavilion under cover, so we do have to spare a thought for him doing the hard yards. Once again, on behalf of the Queensland Government and the Townsville City Council, I'd like to thank the Australian Defence Force and our distinguished guests for their involvement in today's proceedings. Of course, we know Australia Day activities in Queensland are supported by the Queensland Government and assisted by the Australian Government through the National Australia Day Council. We thank the gun battery provided by the 4th Regiment Royal Australian Artillery, managed by Gun Position Officer Lieutenant Samuel Cox. And the viewing of the military guns will shortly be available until 11 o'clock, so you will need to be quick to get up there to the headland to see them, as they are finally available for inspection and then packed away. The official party are staying with us for the Townsville City Council Australia Day Award Winners presentation and the Australia Day Citizenship Ceremony. But for this part of it, we'll say thank you for attending the Australia Day flag raising ceremony. And for those who are at home and have been watching online, thank you very much. We hope you've enjoyed it. The live stream will be available for viewing afterwards as well on the Townsville City Council's YouTube channel. So if you have a look for the Townsville City Council, you shouldn't have too much trouble finding things there. All right, well, we will now continue with the Councillor Jenny Hill to announce the Australia Day Award winning recipients.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Last night I had the great privilege of celebrating the 2023 nominees for Townsville Australia Day Awards. Many of you would not be aware that last year the planned award ceremony had to be amended to a pre-recorded event as a result of the COVID-19 restrictions. And can I say we experienced some firsts during the height of the pandemic, from driveway commemorations for Anzac Day to street processions to celebrate birthdays, separately but still together. We showed what it is in Australia to be unified. We know what it is to show understanding and compassion, to celebrate important events and to adjust for important commemorations. There was a strength that we found in ourselves and within each other as we experienced firsthand the global pandemic. So today we have an opportunity to once again unite and celebrate what it is to be Australian and what it means to call this wonderful country of more than 7.5 million square kilometres home. This year, I truly do appreciate the opportunity to celebrate in person with all of you. So it is my honour to acknowledge an extraordinary group of local individuals who embody the principles and values of what it means to be Australian. What it means to be Australian is far more than your country labelled on your birth certificate. After all, a part of what makes not just this nation but our community so great is the